Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. The 2026 Tata Steel Chess Tournament is nearing its climax, and what a roller coaster it has been. After 12 rounds of fierce struggle in Wikanzi, two Uzbek stars are now dominating the leaderboard with a real shot at the title as we enter the final games. They are Nurdirbek Abdusattorov, who is right now half a point lead in first place, and we also have Javakir Sindarov, who is 7.5 out of 12 in second place. And then we have three players who are 7 out of 12 in third place, tied for third, that is. So this whole ranking stuff is still unclear, definitely. There are a couple of players left who still have the chance to fight for first place, but definitely, in my opinion, it is already a two-horse race between Nurdirbek and Javakir Sindarov. But today, for this video, my topic or my focus is not on either of them, but instead it is on the current world chess champion, the chess king Gukesh Dommaraju. And a question every fan is asking right now, what exactly happened to him? Definitely this whole tournament, Gukesh is not playing it well. He is not in a good form. Just a few rounds ago, Gukesh was in good positions. He had winning positions, but even crushing chances to win those games easily, only to blunder and lose in a completely winning position with plenty of time on the clock. If you guys have seen the games that he has played, for example, there was this game that this very legendary blunder, rook g5, where he just simply blunders the rook in that game. And he played these moves when there's still plenty of time on the clock, I could say, or at least enough time for him to think. His play has been uncharacteristically inconsistent for a world champion. But I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve this whole title. I'm just going to say that this Tata Steel 2026 Tata Steel Chess Masters, it's not not his tournament. But definitely I also hope that he could play better games in the upcoming tournaments and also play well in the World Championship games as well. And there were after round 12, there were still plenty of games that he played. I mean, those games, I looked at them and they have a lot of things to teach us. His game against Hans Niemann, for example, in round 12 can teach us a lot of things, especially the end games, where Gukesh, he again seemed to have a really nice position. He was up material, but it's not a completely winning position, I could say. Still, there are some tricks that Hans could make to trick Gukesh. But in all, Gukesh has the upper hand for a long stretch, almost the entire game, only to let the advantage slip, and this whole game just turned into a draw, and he just watched Niemann escape with a draw once again. So in this video, we won't just talk about the standings or who is going to win this tournament. We're going to break down what unfolded in this key round 12 game, piece by piece, the game between Gukesh against Hans, exploring the moments, the turning points, also the blunders, and how a tournament that started with such high expectations for the world champion has turned into something far more complex or complicated thing. All right. So now let's go into this game that Gukesh has played between Hans Niemann. There are a lot of things that we can learn from it, definitely. And Gukesh still showed plenty of good techniques that a world champion clearly has. So here we have this game opening up with this rule opus once again. And knight f6, castles, bishop e7. This is the main line. b5, bishop b3, castles, and a4. Bishop b7, rook e1, h6, a takes b5. Now, a takes b5, this is not the best option in this position. I could say not even the top three options for white. It's better just to simply develop with knight c3 or bishop d2. Or at some point you could also go for knight b d2, knight f1 ideas. Just follow how the white's idea in the very main line of the rule opus. But here Hans instead decides to play a takes b5 after 10-minute think. This probably he also wanted to get out of Gukesh's home preparation so that these two players, they are now not familiar with this opening anymore and that they need to rely on their own calculations for the middle games. And here Gukesh plays a takes b5, rook takes a8, queen takes a8, and here knight c3. Bishop b4. Now bishop b4 is, again, not that accurate, but I could say that maybe Gukesh is also now not sure how to continue in this position because maybe Hans hasn't played this line before and it's something unexpected. But here it's better for black to play knight a5 to kick this bishop. And the bishop, it's important to not go back to a2 right now. It's not that good because after there's b4 and this knight goes to d5, knight takes d5, let's say e takes d5, and now b3. And white is in a little bit of trouble on the queen side with the damaged pawn structure. But still, of course, this is all okay. Bishop b4. And I can say that after bishop d2, the first 20 moves were completely fine by these two players. d6, queen b1, knight back, and they're just rerouting their pieces, putting them on better squares. b takes c4, just following the opening rules. Bishop c4, bishop a6, and the bishop goes back. It's important here not to trade to give up your bishop pair because at this point, the bishop pair means a lot for the white pieces. And after it gets off the board, now really I think after bishop e3, let's say, these two knights are more flexible than the bishop and the knight at this point because really this bishop doesn't have anything to attack and this knight also is a bit misplaced on f3 with nowhere to go. So here it's important to keep the bishop pair on the board and play bishop b3 here by Hans. Bishop c8 back. Now Gukesh, you might think that he is doing weird moves, like why is he moving the bishop so many times in the opening? But it happens. Like here he plays bishop a6 with the idea of trading off the bishop pair, and here Hans rejects it. But also, as you can see, he wasted a tempo by retreating this bishop back. And now this bishop has no usage anymore on these two diagonals because it's just against these two pawns with nothing to attack. So here, instead, Gukesh decides to play bishop c8 and reroute this bishop to the other side of this board, maybe to force a trade of bishops at that point. So it makes sense, definitely. Queen b2 with the idea of rook a1 to gain control of this open a file. And here, bishop g4. So not only the idea of going bishop e6 at some point for black, but also this very, it happens a lot in Rule Opus where black goes bishop g4. And this knight now, you definitely don't want a double pawn to happen. Like, let's say, for example, I don't know, let's say you play, for example, just like a waiting move, then definitely after taste, this structure is just chaotic for the white pieces, and for white you definitely do not want that to happen. So here it's actually best for, well, the move in the game rook e1 is possible, but also it is best to play knight h4, and then with the idea of going h3 to kick this bishop back, and then this knight will most likely come back to f3, or maybe at some point it could jump to f5, and with the bishop pair, white is going to be completely fine. But here instead in the game, rook a1 was played, attacking the queen first. It's also okay. Queen b8. And now, as you can see, this position is quite like the structure, the pawn structure are all the same, quite balanced position. And it's not like there isn't much things happening here. There's not any tactics or anything. It's quite boring. And there are a lot of situations or a lot of times where this type of positions happen on the board, and one side of the player or one of the players, they couldn't really wait. They do not have the patience. They wanted to create some counterplay. And even when I am playing in tournaments, sometimes when I face these very boring positions and I don't really want to keep on reroute my pieces to to better squares, I just sometimes tactics happen in my mind. And this is exactly what is happening here to Hans. He spent a lot of time thinking and played this move. It's a tactic, but unfortunately it doesn't work. And it is this move, knight e5. It doesn't work, and it is given a double question mark here by chess.com. And the reason that it doesn't work is because black can just simply take. And now you take on e5. Well, white does have some compensation for the sacrifice knight with 2 pawns and also the bishop here. But the 2 pawns that he is up are the e4 pawn and the d3 pawn, and it is so hard for white to push these pawns. And not that I think it's just not enough. The compensation is not enough for the white pieces, and Gukesh here is just simply much better. But still, he needs to play accurately. Well, indeed he did, and he played knight. Oh, sorry, I just clicked this thing. All right, queen e5, knight g6, and queen g3 back. So basically here, after the queen goes to g3, you can see it is on a very bad square. And also these 2 knights, they are controlling a lot of squares, and they have a bright future, definitely. The queen here can also go back to c3 if you want. And now the bishop goes back. First of all, it's very important for black to get rid of white's bishop pair. One of the bishops off the board. And after takes, these 2 knights, let's say after queen c4 or something to attack, rook e8. And now let's say for white just starts to wait. But now this knight can just come to a5 and jump into these squares. Black is just better, technically speaking. But it still needs a lot of calculations, and you do need to exchange like some pieces to increase your advantage at this point. So after queen g3 here, Gukesh, he played a not so accurate move, c5, with the idea of trading off the queens. Here it is better for him to play this move queen c8 with the idea of bishop e6, again to trade off the bishops. But here, I guess it's not that easy to see, and c5 also at some point makes some sense. And here Hans plays f4. Here the move h5 with the idea of going h4, e5, and here h4, queen e3, knight h5, queen e4. This is really tricky because this idea of going queen g6, this bishop is pinning this pawn so that the pawn cannot take on g6, and if black doesn't see it, then after queen g6, white will be winning on the spot. But here Gukesh, he spot this really nice move, and it's like a brilliant move. He played queen c8. Now you might want to ask, wait a minute, why can't I just take on g6? Well, the point is that this queen on c8, it does, it's not like the queen can go anywhere. It has to go to c8 with a point that it can now go c4. And if the bishop takes, you just take on c4, and after takes, you lose this pawn, the queen on g6, and you lose the game definitely. And here, so after, oh, wait a minute, here. So queen g6 is no longer possible because after c4, this queen cannot take either this knight or neither this knight or the bishop, because the bishop is being defended by the queen, and the bishop itself is defending this knight. So queen g6 is no longer possible, and it's like a tricky idea for Gukesh. He wanted to trick Hans, but of course Hans also saw it pretty easily, and instead he played this move, rook a4, with the idea of preventing c4 and now actually quite threatening to take on g6 at some point. And here queen f5 was played. Now Gukesh, he desperately wants to trade off the queens, which makes sense because when you are up material or having an advantage, you do want to transfer the game into to an end game, which might be easier to win in general. But here, of course, well, Hans, he takes it, which is definitely not the best move. Here he needs to play e6. This is the best move, but after takes, and now this upcoming idea h3 is just so computer-like move, and after queen takes, d takes, e4. But the point is that after bishop e2, white gets to improve his pawn structure, and here bishop takes e6, there goes another pawn, and suddenly, as you can see, these two knights, they are misplaced a bit, and white might have some compensation to hold for a draw. But definitely this needs a lot of calculation, the depth and the width of calculation, that is. And instead, Hans just takes it immediately on f5. And after bishop f5 here, he played king f2, bishop d7, rook a7, bishop e6. But already, as you can see, even by the eval bar, black is having a really big advantage. And with no doubt, black should be able to win this thing. But here after king f3, takes, black Gukesh now gets rid of white's bishop pair. He is one step closer to winning. And after f5, rook a6, king h7. But the reason that even though black is up a knight, like a whole piece, it's still not completely enough for it to win immediately is because, first of all, white is up 2 pawns, and these pawns, especially the e5 pawn, is a pass pawn. It definitely puts pressure on black, and also it prevents this knight from retreating back to f6. And the other thing is that these two knights, they're on bad squares. If this knight were on d4, then black would be winning on the spot, but unfortunately, these two knights, they cannot reach d4, and that is why black still needs to try to improve his position slowly. And here he played rook b8 to attack this b3 pawn, g4, takes, rook takes b3. Now actually, after Han's mistake by playing rook d6, here, to allow rook b8, the position might already seems a bit more clear for black. And after takes bishop e1, black is now only down 1 pawn. And for Hans, it's he can only just play moves like the bishop going back and forth. In general, as the defender, when you're the worst side and you're the defender, normally you don't need to use that too much of time compared to the side who is better or the side who is attacking, because the side who is attacking, there are so many things to calculate, and you just feel like you don't want to give away, you don't want to play a move without thinking too much, because you might, you'll be afraid that you miss a tactic or something, or just throw the whole advantage away, that is. And for the side who is defending, you know that you're worse. You know that if you lose, it makes sense that you lose. So you just need to try to make moves that make sense. That's what the defender only needs to do. So that, at this point, actually Hans is just moving doing what he needs to do. And just moving back and forth. c4 here, king goes to e3. This is all kind of forced already and completely losing for white. But here, c takes d3. It is actually just better to play c3 to push this pawn, and let's say rook c6. After rook b1, bishop f2, you can now go, for example, here. And if you take, now you can go here. And now you can get to activate your knight by playing knight hf4 to win this pawn. And this should just be winning on the spot. But here, with Gukesh still having 17 minutes on the clock, and for Hans still only 31 seconds on the clock, things start to get a little bit complicated. First, there's c takes d3, not the best move, and then we have the rooks traded off the board, and here, this is a blunder. Here, Gukesh has a ton of options to win, but not knight hf4. He can simply just play king g8, and the king goes up. And this is completely winning because he can just move his knight away, play this, and activate his knight. That's all he needs to do. But instead, he decides to take on f4. And he thought that he is winning with these two pass pawns. And indeed, white is still having a lot of pressure, but already this is a draw. This is a draw. And after this move, king g6, bishop b4, and bishop d2, Hans, he is just defending extremely well. You can see every move that he played. Well, ignore the eval bar, which I think just suddenly went down and then came up. He played every move very accurately, and Gukesh, he realized that it is very hard for him to push the pawns. And here after king f7, Hans here made a mistake. This is the very last chance that Gukesh has to win this game. Hans here, he has only 2 moves to hold the draw. One is to go bishop e1, one is to go king d6. But already this is pure endgame stuff and endgame techniques, and sometimes you just have to calculate pure calculation and also your understanding of the endgame positions. And already this is the endgame where it is so rare to see. So definitely I think both players need to rely on their calculation and everything. So here these 2 moves are the only moves that can win for white, but it's not win, to draw for white. But here instead, Hans, he played this move, king d5. Just a 1 move difference compared to king d6, and this is losing on the spot. But here, Gukesh, this is the only move that he can win, and it is to play g4. And the point is that now after bishop e1, there's knight f4 check, and after the king goes up, there's knight d3, and it's just impossible for white to defend these 2 pawns from pushing. The king is too far away, and if the king were to go down, let's say, there's now king e6, and this is just winning. But instead here, Gukesh played this move knight f4 check first, and now the difference is that the king goes up, and it is just 1 move difference. So here g4, but the point is that after bishop a5, let's say, you could also play bishop d2 if you want to attack the knight, but it's bishop a5 is also okay, and after knight e6, you can't really push now because there's e6, and if you take, the king is just in time to get back and stop the pawns. If you push, there's bishop b6, and this is a draw. Because white is going to take this pawn, and if you push, king is back in time to gobble up these pawns. So here after knight e6, bishop e1 now back, and you can see that black no longer can move up with his king. And after knight g5, king goes down, knight e6, we have a repetition. But then after f4, Gukesh still wants to try. But already this is quite easy for Hans to defend because his king can just go back and take these pawns. And after king e7, bishop e1, bishop h4, and king e6, this was a draw because after bishop e1, black can just not improve his position. He cannot get his king into this to help these pawns, and a draw was agreed at this point. What a game. Gukesh, he was completely winning, and he had a lot of chances, even at the very end, if he had played g4 immediately, but it was so hard to find the big difference. And this position, I think it is worth a lot for us to analyze this endgame, because, when we play, sometimes these positions can happen. So I think this difference, again, is that if you play king d6, there's g4, but now bishop e1 and knight f4, it's not a check, so that black cannot gain a tempo. And let's say if this pawn push, but now this king can just go back just in time. And now knight f4 doesn't do anything because there's this move king d7 to push this pawn, and already this knight cannot really help these pawns push, and white is just in time to stop black. What a game. Like, Gukesh, he is not playing in his best form, but still, as we can see, even when he is not in his best form, he is having advantages, having winning positions. Still, this shows that he is extremely strong player. For Hans, he also showed amazing defending techniques in the endgame part. So we can learn a lot of things from this game. I think every game in this Tata Steel Chess Masters is very interesting. This year's Tata Steel, I think it is full of games which is very dramatic and everything. So, yeah. Even though for Gukesh, he can't really win this tournament. He doesn't have any chances to win. But still, for this tournament, he gained experience and also learned a lot of things, definitely, for himself. And for Hans, he's doing great so far. And 7 out of 12, if I'm not mistaken, tied for 3rd. So yeah, so I wish these 2 players, they play more exciting games in the follow-up tournaments and in the very last 2 rounds. So yeah, but right now, hope you guys enjoyed my recap of this game as well as this whole video. And who will win this Tata Steel? No one knows, but most likely between Nerdabag and Cinderov, who are fighting for first place. But yeah, right now, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!